I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I am so honored that I get to be with women and I get to introduce women to you that are change makers, that are people that have stepped into their power, found their voices, and want to share, want to be in high service. I really believe it's our time on the planet. And so I am so excited that we can connect, support each other, collaborate, and bring our light to the planet. So we are here every week, and we are on Spotify and iTunes and Spreaker and Amazon, YouTube. You can find us and you play. Please subscribe, share it with other people, and then come play with us. So my guest today, I'm so excited about it, Raphael van Workum. She helps intuitives stop living in overwhelm and burnout and take control of their own energy. She's passionate about empowering empaths to have a healthy relationship with themselves, the people they care about, and the universe. She's an awakening coach, a best-selling author, an intuitive, and a qualified counselor. Raphael, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia.
So happy that you're here. And I'd like to start by introducing yourself to people from where did you come from? Where were you born? How did you grow up? Because I'm sure you probably didn't drop on the planet and go, oh my gosh, I'm an intuitive.
Gosh, no, not at all. So I was born in New Zealand, where I currently live now. I grew up in a family that had a very religious background of Catholicism. And so we weren't practicing Catholics, or we didn't have, I would say we had a very neutral, how I was raised was very neutral in terms of religion, in terms of spirituality. We didn't have spirituality, but it wasn't like shunned in the family, but there was definitely this undertone of a religious aspect that had come in from my grandparents and the way my parents had been raised. But in saying that, like in the household, like we would have looked at people like myself doing intuitive work, giving readings and guidance, and been like, that's weird. Wow. Like, what are they doing? They're just like a weird hippie, like fortune teller, like all of that rhetoric was around me when I was a child, not just in my household, but also at school and everything. So I grew up sort of with this idea that there's these other worlds and there's these other things going on, but that, you don't do that. If you want to be part of society, if you want to contribute and participate, that's another, you don't partake in that kind of world.
Yeah. I totally get that. I grew up at African Methodist Episcopal, and we were really ensconced in, going to church. And so, the stuff like you're talking about was outside, although my grandmother believed in tea leaf readers and that kind of stuff. So I want to know then, what was the moment that said, maybe there's more to this life and maybe I'm connected to it?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So before I share that moment, I think it is important to note that as a child, I definitely had an intuitive connection. Like I saw fairies, and I had imaginary friends who we all know now are like guides. And I had these experiences with spirits and things, but it all felt very foreign and it didn't feel like something that was safe and open. So at some point around about 12, I shut it down. And I find a lot of people have had that experience, that they were intuitively connected as a kid, then they shut it down. Then throughout my 20s, for about the next 10 years, I actually didn't experience anything. I was just like completely shut down. Then in 2016, when I was around 23, I was traveling around Europe on a bit of an OE adventure on my own. And I was visiting some friends in Scotland, and we went out for a night, on the town. Like there was me and 3 other guys, and we just were having drinks and having a good laugh and stuff. And we went to this nightclub, and I went into the bathroom and I actually got drugged. by somebody at this nightclub. And I ran to the toilet and was just like trying to get the drugs out of my mouth and out of my body. And it didn't come up, like I couldn't throw anything up. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I don't know if this is a roofie. I don't know if this is like a bath salt. Like I have no idea. And I'd had no experience with drugs apart from weed in my entire life by that point. Weed and alcohol, I'd never done anything else by that point. So I was like, oh my God, what, like, I got to just get back to my friends. And so I rushed back through the crowds. And this is like a full nightclub. We're talking like a couple of hundred people in this space, flashing lights going everywhere, like smoke machine, you know, in a foreign country at 23. And I managed, luckily, to get back to my friends. But by the time I'd got back there, I'd already started to like have hallucinations. And obviously the drugs had started to like set in a little bit. And so then the rest of the night is a bit blurry. It sort of went in and out, but it wasn't a roofie. I didn't pass out, but I had these experiences of seeing these lights and seeing these colors and sort of moving in and out of my reality and my worlds. And luckily, at some point later, one of my friends was like, you don't look okay, like, let's go. And we got outside and I told him what had happened. And he's like, oh my God, okay, we need to get you some food. We need to like get you to a safe space. So we went and got some food. He took me back to my accommodation and I went to sleep. And I was like, we kept on saying, it is so fortunate that I wasn't roofied. Like, it's so fortunate that it wasn't this. It's so fortunate that it wasn't that. Like at that time, it was just gratitude. And I went to sleep, and in the morning I woke up and basically everything that I'd been seeing and experiencing didn't go away. I woke up and I still had these colors and shimmering, and I walked out on the street and I could see what I didn't know what it was at the time, but I could see people's auras. And I actually walked down to the supermarket, and this might be a little bit controversial for some people, might be a bit like, oh, but I went to the supermarket and I saw a spirit in the supermarket for the first time in about 10 years. And as an adult, just saw one right there. And it like tried to come at me and I was like, oh my God. And of course, like I had no idea what was happening. I'd never explored about spirits. I'd never done intuitive work. I'd never even touched tarot cards or oracle cards before in my life. And so I thought that I was going crazy. I really thought that I was losing my mind. And I was so scared to tell anybody what was happening. And of course I was traveling and everything, so I could kind of get away with it. I just was like, I'm just going to deal with this. I'm obviously losing my mind. I'm just going to enjoy my time, because I honestly thought that when I got back to New Zealand, if I told people that I'd get put in hospital or I'd get put on these really intense medications, and that was me gone. So I just sort of took the rest of the trip as like, whatever happens, I'm just going to enjoy this because I'm now crazy and no one's going to believe me. And that's my life done, basically.
Well, but do you think that the drug opened up some field within you that had been closed?
Absolutely. I believe that it opened up my third eye and my crown chakra in a way that it had been opened as a child, but it just went boof, like just in that moment. And since I started doing this work and since I started sharing my story, I have met so many people who have had that experience with other forms of drugs or plant medicine, or some sort of really significant traumatic experience as well, where just suddenly the lights go from being off to on.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I love that we're talking about this because there are a lot of people that have these experiences that don't want to talk about them because they don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to be judged or criticized or thought crazy. And meanwhile, they're doing exactly what you did, going, oh my God, I've lost my mind and I cannot tell anybody because they'll put me away. And so when you got back and it was still there, what was your next step?
So initially it was avoidance. So I avoided doing anything in that space for a while. However, because I was so anxious and because I wasn't sleeping, because I was having all of these visions and I was having really intense nightmares and everything, my physical health took a really big toll. And so I started to get really ill. And when I got back to New Zealand, I was actually very physically ill and also really not in a good space mentally either, or spiritually. Everything was just completely out of whack. But being the skeptic that I was and being so afraid of the spiritual side of things, I went and did a chakra healing distance with someone. And that kind of made me feel a little bit more aligned. And I went and focused on the physical health journey. So I went and saw a whole lot of specialists. A lot of them couldn't help me. I was misdiagnosed, a whole lot of stuff. Ended up going into more of the holistic health space, got diagnosed, got understood autoimmune condition. I had endometriosis as well. My appendix was about to burst, all sorts of stuff going on. So I went through that journey. And with that success and sort of getting into a physically healthy place, I went, okay, I'm going to address my mental health now. And I'm going to sort of address this a little bit, because this is all the spiritual stuff. I was like, this hasn't gone away. If anything, it got stronger as I got physically healthier. So I did two things. I went to a spiritual coach and I went to a counselor who understood and was accepting of the fact that I was going through the spiritual experience. I didn't go to a therapist who was going to tell me that I was crazy. And, I went to somebody who it was safe. Mm-hmm. And with working with those two people, that was kind of the turning point for me.
That's incredible. I mean, that's I did something similar, and it's why people come to me, because I will do the spiritual work with them and the mind body work with them, but I guess I'm wondering, this took place over a period of time, right? And so as you began this awakening and you started connecting with these two people, was there a calling? Was there something that came through that was saying, it's time for you to move forward?
Yes, but I ignored those callings. And the final moment, like the final penny drop, actually was my partner at the time knew about this spiritual coach who lived a couple of hours away from me. Like, they didn't live in the same city as me, where I was living at the time in Wellington. And so my partner arranged for this spiritual coach to come down and do some clearing of our house. Wow. And just said, she's not going to talk to you. You don't even have to be there if you don't want, Rafe. It's fine. Because I was super resistant to it. And I was resistant to it because I was afraid that if I told people what was happening and that if I went into it, that it would either cause me more pain and suffering, or that it would ultimately lead to me being locked away, essentially. I was so terrified of being hospitalized or being committed for what I was experiencing. So the spiritual coach arrived, or this, spiritual woman, and she did some house clearing work, and we had a chat. And later on in the time, she was there for like 3 hours, and I let her do some like healing work with me and some connection. And I told her about some of the dreams I was having and some of the more, like, I sort of tested the waters with her and sort of was like, oh, I'm seeing this and I'm experiencing that. And everything I said, she was just like, cool. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're not crazy. And that was so validating for me to have somebody who was so put together, was so grounded, was a professional in this space, explain all of that to me and go, yeah, that's fine. Like, other people feel this too, and you're not the only one, kind of thing. And so I started to go see her regularly, and I actually would travel 2 hours each way to go visit her. And I would see her every couple of weeks. And I had coaching for about probably 6 months, but there was so much that happened in that time. Like, it was so accelerated. And at that time as well, I started to see a counselor, and then I worked with that counselor for just over a year with a little bit of overlap, but mostly working independently. And we did some more, mindset work. We did stuff around my relationships with my emotions. We did stuff around my family, that kind of slightly more traditional mindset and mental health piece. But he was like, he would ask me in sessions, well, what do your guides think? Or he'd be like, well, what are you feeling about this? What does your chakras say? And that also was super powerful. Yeah.
Love it. So let me just ask you, is Raphael your given name?
Yes, it is.
And you know it's an angel, so I find that interesting. Who named you?
So my parents actually named me after my auntie, and my auntie was named after my grandfather came up with the name, and he was a deeply religious man, deeply Catholic, very, very service orientated man, did a lot of beautiful things to support New Zealand as a country and support his community and his family. So it's a very special name that I've been gifted. And I always used to get told when I was a kid, like, you've got the name of an angel. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And people would say to me, you're going to do healing work one day, because Raphael, the angel, was the healer angel. And I would always be like, yeah, sure. But yeah, so it was gifted to me. I didn't choose it. Yeah.
Well, I love it. And I love how the universe syncs up in ways and works through us, and we get born with these gifts, not even realizing that they're there. And so today, so you've written books, you speak and you work with people. Tell me how you work with people.
Sure. So I work as an awakening coach, but I also became a qualified counselor, in part because that's what I would have liked to have had in my journey, right? Like I saw a spiritual coach, and then I also saw a counselor. And so as a lot of us who work in this space, we become what we wished we could have had at that time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I work with people. So I work with people who've gone through a similar journey to me, in that it's been a really turbulent journey. But I also work with people who are empaths and intuitives, who have those natural gifts there, or are highly empathic, but struggle with taking control of those gifts, or struggle with connecting in and trusting them really regularly. So there's sort of two main parts to that work. I do integrated healing work, where I combine counseling theory, grounded counseling theory, coupled with self-healing techniques. So I don't do the healing work on people. I teach people how to do their own energy healing work and combine that. And so a lot of people start with that journey, right? Because when we're a healer, or when we're meant to be a support person, we've experienced trauma, which we need to work through and consolidate within ourselves in order to be able to support people. And it expands that emotional capacity, right?
Yeah. Oh, that is so beautiful and so necessary, because a lot of people do not have any idea how to manage the accelerations of frequencies on the planet, their inner guidance, their inner knowing, and because they're dealing with all kinds of other stuff. So it's beautiful that you've integrated that. And I guess I'm wondering, how do you manage your personal life, having all of these gifts, are you totally surrounded by people that are the same, or have you learned to navigate with other people? How do you manage it?
I love this question, because I think it all comes down to one thing: boundaries. Yeah. And as empaths, as intuitives, as people who are here to support others, we are the most naturally unboundaried people on the planet. So the biggest part of my journey, as particularly working in this space and helping people with significant trauma and energy and anger, we do a lot of stuff around inner child work and anger release, as well as the intuitive connection. It's very intense and it's very heavy work a lot of the time. And so for me, so much of that is about boundary setting. So boundary setting with my work, like I have a separate space where I do my work. I'm quite stringent on when I work my hours. I'm very conscious of who I take on as a client and making sure that they're ready and that we're going to be a good energetic match. I'm very conscious about the people I live with and the people I enter into my home, and the things that I fill my day with and my mind with, the media I consume, everything. I'm very conscious about is this serving me? Is this taking me a step forward? Is this healthy? Is this something that's, sustainable or not? And making those conscious decisions related to boundaries all the time. But I have a very grounded life in a lot of ways. People are quite surprised to hear, like, I don't, contrary to popular belief, unlike a lot of spiritual coaches, I don't meditate for an hour a day. I go out for drinks with my girlfriends and we go for wines at the bar. I have a very grounded partner. I go for hikes. Like, one of my favorite things to do is ecstatic dance. And for me, that's my meditation. And so the reason that a lot of people end up working with me is they want to incorporate their intuitive gifts, and they want to have that deeper trust in knowing, and they want to manifest, and they want to have their guides there and everything, but they still want to live in the grounded physical worlds. And they've still got families, and they've still got partners, and they've still got jobs. And so what we do is we empower that person. So we put them in their power so that they can integrate those gifts into whatever their life is. So, like, I work with women who are working in the corporate world, and they incorporate intuitive messaging and readings and guidance into how they manage their staff in a very subtle way. And they integrate their boundary setting, and they integrate their energy practices and their self-care. And then I also work with people who are like living in tiny homes and caravans and are, have that more gypsy lifestyle. It's like, wherever you're at in your life, you can incorporate this without having to commit to silent retreats and doing yoga every day and meditation every day. Like, it doesn't have to be this either. It can be both.
Yes. Well, I love that, because what we're talking about here is harmony. But we're talking about the fact that we're human beings, but we're having a spiritual experience, and how do we balance that? And so I love that. So I want you to tell us, how do we find you? If people want to, because I'm assuming you work with people online as well. Yes.
Yeah. I pretty much do all my work online these days.
Beautiful. So how do people find you?
Sure. So everyone can go to any of my social media, my website, and everything is Empowered with Raphael. So it's, I think we'll probably be able to put the link somewhere for people, right? But it's Empowered with, and then Raphael spelled Raphael, same as the archangel. And so on Instagram, that's my handle. On Facebook, that's how you can find me. That's my website. So it's empoweredwithraphael.com. Everything's through that. And you can email me as well through my website.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are people listening to this who can really relate and go like, oh, I need her. So I think that's awesome. So I ask the same last question of every guest. And the question is, this show is called Women Awakening. And what do you think is the one thing women need to know about the importance of their awakening?
Yeah, I was pondering on this earlier, because it's so hard to like choose one thing. And I want to relate it back to the conversation we're having today. So, I mean, I know that there's lots of different things you can do, but one of the things that I find resonates the most, and where I see the most transformation for people, is in being in your power. And so as you awaken, rather than awakening and going immediately, how can I help people? And like, how can I, being out here, coming back into yourself and being empowered. So being in power. And what that looks like is, grounding, boundary setting, how you make decisions, how you communicate to yourself each day, the choices you make around your self-care, things like that.
Beautiful. Ladies, I hope you wrote all this down. If you didn't, roll it back and listen again so that you can get all of this wisdom. Raphael, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful you're on the planet. I'm so grateful for your awakening and that you're in such high service to people. It's quite an honor to know you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. So ladies, we do this every week. Please come back. Here's the thing. You are unique. You are a masterpiece in the making. The call is for you to open, to trust, step into that, and allow your inner knowing to come forward. The universe will do the rest. I'm honored to walk this path with you. I look forward to seeing you again. Many blessings.